and I will do a quick introduction as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, that is great.
Okay, perfect. So everyone that's on, I just kind of want to introduce you guys real quick to Michelle, and she'll give you a little background also, but I've known Michelle for a long time. She used to actually work on the Kansas side in early intervention and was our infant toddler program's technical assistance support. So she was the one who helped us make sure that we were, following things as best we could to, fidelity and helping us, make some shifts as we move forward. So Michelle is someone that we bring back to do the RBI training because I've enjoyed the way that she's presented it as an RBI trainer, but also she does know our program. So it's been a really good fit to have her still do that. So that's our connection. But Michelle, if you don't mind taking over and talking a little bit more, and then we'll get rolling.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm so glad everybody's here. I know that it's a cold morning, and again, I'm so happy that we're doing this by video today. So I have a master's degree in public administration in nonprofit management, but my bachelor's degree is in child development. I have worked in early intervention since, oh gosh, I don't even want to say. It's been a long time. I've worked on the Missouri side, I've worked on the Kansas side, and I now provide services in Part C, First Steps as a special instructor with on the Missouri side. So that's interesting too, to kind of get that firsthand boots on the ground, kind of remembering what it's like to go into families' homes, which is a whole different perspective. I'm so glad I'm doing that because it just keeps me grounded in what I present to other people and what's possible and what isn't possible and those kind of things, because so many times when you get so far removed, you feel like, well, you're just supposed to do it that way. And it's just not that easy to do it on a checklist or anything like that. So as I present the routines-based interview, I did go to the Routines-Based Interview Institute back in 2008. So that's been a long time when Robin McWilliam was at Vanderbilt in Nashville. So he has since moved on to other places and is now at Alabama. He actually is the executive director of his own company, as well as a professor at the University of Alabama. He heads the EIEIO, which is the Evidence-Based International Early Intervention Office. So he's still in touch. He still promotes his routines-based interview and routines-based early intervention as an approach for early intervention. So as I go through all of this, I do want you guys to know that I will be presenting the information as Robin McWilliam would be presenting it. So I'm giving you the facts, like how it's supposed to be really completed with fidelity and with, all of those things in check that make it an evidence-based practice. I also know that, in real life, those are not always possible in your program, and the way that we do things don't always align perfectly with theory. Our practice doesn't. So with that being said, I think that what I would like to do is, it looks like there's about 4 people on, so that would give us enough time to go through and have everybody introduce themselves. So we're not going to do the pre-test right now, but I'd like everybody to go in and introduce themselves with your name, your discipline, how long you've been in home visiting, and if you are familiar at all with the RBI. So who wants to? Deidre, looks like you just popped up first, so you're the lucky one.
Yes, I'm Deirdre Newcomer, and I have been in early intervention for over 20 years. Been doing the RBI for quite a while, just looking for a refresher.
Good. Jessie?
Hi, I'm Jessie Bauer, speech language pathologist. Just started home visits in January. I've been in early intervention for probably over 10 years. And I am a little familiar with the RBI.
Where did you do early intervention before? Did you do it before you came to Kansas?
So I was at Britton Development before I came to infant toddler. And prior to that, I was in Blue Valley doing preschool. And prior to that, I was in the elementary schools in Nebraska.
Oh, okay. I just didn't know
Yeah.
if you were like, did early intervention in another state. I'm always curious as to what they do in other states.
No.
So, okay, Carrie?
I'm Carrie Grossadier. I've been with infant toddler and early intervention for, I think, 18 years. I'm fairly familiar with the RBI. I think this may be the third training I've had, maybe the second I've had with you, maybe three. So I'm mentoring Honor and would love to have a refresher just because over time, you know, things slip and you forget. So I think it's always good to refresh things to do it better.
Thank you. Jen?
Okay, sorry about my camera here. My kids are messing with my computers. So it is what it is. My name is Jen Boxberger. I am a grad student through Emporia. So this is my at-home based practicum. I am early childhood special ed. And I'm kind of freaking out because Jesse was my son's
I am freaking out
I
too.
know, speech
Okay.
pathologist at Britain at IDC. So which is so awesome to see you, Jesse.
Oh my gosh. Hi, Jen.
My son is 9, and so we went through infant toddler services. I was a parent that went through this program, and honestly, it was amazing. And it was the whole reason I decided that this was something I wanted to do. So yeah, just I am a little familiar with the our routines-based assessment or interview, just with going to evaluations and witnessing the providers give them. So yeah.
Well, how exciting, a little reunion going on.
Yes, I know, right? If you could only like see what I really look like with this like magical black and white weird camera here, but oh well.
Oh, awesome, that's great. So I see a little head peeking in there. Maybe they want to learn too. So this morning, just kind of this.
Love those snow days.
Yes,
Sorry.
exactly. Oh no, we love the snow days. I know. I had I was on a meeting yesterday, and yeah, this mom was, she's a service coordinator, and she was going through, and she's just like, I don't think the schools realize that, you know, they want me to do this online schooling and all of this stuff. And she's like, and I have work to do too. She's like, so I'm sure they're a hot mess over there. They're like over there trying to do their stuff. It was very funny. So yes, I have to say, I mean, the virtual learning is a good thing, but it sure does put parents in a pickle sometimes when you are then responsible for their learning for that day, but also do your job virtually. So kind of interesting how that has all changed things. So just real quick, our agenda for today, I didn't adjust the times. We'll do, you know, the first 15 minutes, obviously, is the welcome and introductions. Then we're going to spend some time talking about preparing for the RBI, because I think that's a really important concept for parents to understand what is going to be asked of them in an interview, because the questions that we ask in an RBI are not typically the necessary or the normal easy, you know, what does your child eat and when do they go to bed? It dives a little deeper into what their day looks like. And so having them be prepared for that is really important. We'll take a break, and then we'll really dive into asking about those questions, recapping the RBI, and really going over the outcomes section, which is if you do a really good RBI, you will already have your outcomes. So you don't have to sit around after a meeting and really think about those outcomes or what they should be, because the parent will have already given you a lot of really good information. So
hey, Michelle, I'm going to pop on real quick. I know it's hard to see the chat. We do have 2 more on that didn't have a chance to introduce themselves. I bet it's just the way the participants are laid out.
yeah,
So we've got Honor and Jordan, I think are the 2, right? That we hadn't had a chance.
Okay.
Jordan, do you want to pop on? I saw you come off mute first.
Yeah, I'm Jordan. I'm a SLP grad student, and I will hopefully graduate in May. So, and I'm a little familiar with the RBI just through my practicum experience here. So, yeah.
And I'm Honor. I'm an occupational therapist. I graduated this past May, and I've only been in early intervention since January. And I'm familiar with the RBI from these past month and a half. So
Okay, very good. Okay, so tell me, so are you seeing just my slide then? And then are you seeing, like, I can only see 6 people at a time, it looks like. And so I thought that there was just,
So,
oh, I see.
yeah, we see like, I see your like main slide and then I see your next slide.
Oh, you do see my next slide?
Mhm, yes. And I don't know, I cannot coach you on how to change that. I am
Yeah,
not.
that's because I have it set up so that I see what slide I'm presenting and then I see you all. And so I do see Nadine is on too. So I'd like Nadine to kind of introduce herself too. So now I realize that, okay, because I like to see the people, I like to see the faces, kind of see. what's
Yes, yes. So please leave your cameras on. So Michelle is not talking to, yeah, blank screen.
going.
Hi, Michelle. I'm Nadine. I'm a speech language pathologist with infant toddlers. And I've actually been there since 2006. And so I'm doing like a refresher for me. And then Anna, my student, should be hopping on. She was going to be driving back to Minnesota today. So she was going to kind of see what she can do, but I was like, I'm going to join either way because I need the refresher. And I apologize about being late. We were just exiting a kiddo and mom was asking about narcolepsy. So it kind of took a different conversation and took a little longer.
Those
So,
do that.
Yeah.
That happens.
So
Yes.
thank you for letting me join.
Oh, definitely,
And hi,
definitely.
Jordan. Excited to see you.
Okay. So yeah, so I'm going to try to navigate this because, okay, I see it now. Yeah, I'm just going to leave my next slide up because it doesn't really matter to me if it doesn't matter to you all. Does it matter to you as you're recording, Monica?
Nope, we're pretty flexible.
Okay, good, because I can spend a lot of time trying to figure that out, or I can just move on. Okay, so oh, just a little warning too, I've been drinking my morning coffee, and so sometimes I talk really fast. So if I talk too fast, just be like, whoa, slow down, I didn't hear what you said. So just let me know. I am not, I have some pretty thick skin, so just let me know. It doesn't bother me. Okay, so we're going to jump into the family assessment, which really is, it's a federal regulation to do this family assessment, and the RBI fits into that family assessment requirement set up by federal regs. I'm not going to go into all of this, but the main parts of the federal regs that are required by all Part C programs is that it's conducted by qualified personnel, that it is definitely voluntary by the family. So the family is actually giving you permission, like, is it okay if I ask you these questions about what's happening in your family and how your day is going, so that they understand that that's going on. It must have an assessment tool, which again is where the RBI fits into this family assessment piece, because it does have a protocol. I do believe I sent that to everybody. It has a protocol that you move through that you can use. You don't have to use the protocol, but it does have one as a tool, and it has to include an interview with the family that includes the description of its resources, priorities, and concerns. So you're definitely supposed to be asking about the family's personal concerns. So even though the child has some deficits on an assessment or an evaluation, those don't necessarily equal the family's concerns for their child. As we all know, a family, you know, we see them and they're behind in their language, and the family's just like, well, but I'm more concerned that they can't, you know, climb up the stairs, or they can't go down the slide, or play with their friends or their siblings, those kind of things. So definitely a very family-centered interview, and it's really important that those are the Fed regs as far as why they set up a family assessment and a requirement for a family assessment. In the Kansas procedure manual, now I have not gone back and looked at your procedure manual since I left, so this may be a little bit old. Unless, have they changed anything, Monica, in the procedure manual? No, so it's all the same.
Nope, all the same. That's probably coming up in the next year or two, I bet.
Okay, I was going to say usually they revise it, and again they reiterate in the procedure manual that it must be voluntary and based on information through the assessment tool and an interview. Again, have a description of the concerns, priorities, and resources of the families, because you're really looking to support and enhance their capacity to meet the needs of their own child. They added conducted in a non-discriminatory manner and in the native language of the family, which I do believe is in federal regs too, is that, so if you have a family that does not speak English, you need to make sure that you have a translator or an interpreter there. I know in some of the homes that I have been in, it's not always easy, but I make sure that I do it. And then conducted in a non-intrusive manner, which of course is something that we would normally do. We're not going to go in and be respectful of the family. So some of those things are pretty common sense, but they put that in their manual just to make sure that we all understand that this really is about the family and what the family wants for their child in the family assessment section. So overview of the routines-based interview really is just about that it's a semi-structured interview. So it's called a semi-structured interview because it has some very structured pieces, and then it has some very non-structured, unstructured items within the interview. So the structured pieces are that it does have a protocol, it does have a predictable flow. So if you go through it, and you guys can see my notes, if you go through it, you're asking the same questions for every routine. So you're kind of gathering enough information. So you're asking the same questions, but you're also kind of delving in deeper for those questions that you really need to know more information about, which is the unstructured part. So you come across, you're asking who's all in the home, who's all doing what while you're going through a routine. And then you find, well, in this particular routine, somebody's over here crying and somebody's over here, hitting a sister. And so you kind of find that chaos within those routines that a family might need help with. So the way the interview begins, again, and the way the interview ends should be extremely consistent with what he has going on. And then he also has these questions that you need to ask in every interview, which we'll talk about too. And then the wrap up at the end, where you kind of go and you recap the whole RBI and you go over the outcomes, that should all look the same. So there should be some very you should be able, if you're looking at an RBI from Robin McWilliams' standpoint, if you walk into an interview with a family, you should know that it's an RBI by the questions that you're asking and then the way that you're asking them. So it isn't just, of course, we tend to do things in our own way and have our own style, but they should actually have all of these questions from the beginning to the end for him, which again employs a very family-centered practice. Because if you're talking more than the family in an RBI, then there's something that isn't going well. And that could be just that the family's very quiet, but the family needs to be answering all of these questions. And so if the family is talking more than you are, then you probably need to look at kind of how you're asking your questions or how you need to really engage that parent. And it's a needs assessment for the child and family functioning. So it's not just about the child. So many times, we get so focused on, oh, the child has a deficit, this is what we need to do for the child. And we forget that this child has a whole family all around them, that we need to understand what they're doing also and how that impacts the child's development. So, so that is kind of some of those things that you really need to kind of keep in mind when you're doing the RBI. And the family is directed to state their own concerns and priorities. So when you're asking them, so what are your concerns? And they're like, and it's really quiet and they're thinking, just give them just be quiet also. And sometimes that's harder. It's easier said than done, just to have that space of quietness, but let that family answer that question. Let them think about it. Let them really take the time, because they probably have come to this knowing that their child obviously has a developmental delay or a condition that requires early intervention, but they probably haven't really thought about sharing what their concerns are or what their priorities are for their family, which may not have a whole lot to do with what you found on your evaluation or assessment. So, and if the family's comfortable enough, they'll share that. So any questions about that? Yeah. Okay. Again, if this is very informal, so if you have a question about anything, just pop up and say something. The purpose of the RBI, according to Robin McWilliams, is to establish a positive relationship with the family. It's really to put the family in the driver's seat. It's really to say, this is about you. This is not about me. I can't answer these questions for you. These are very personal. And again, that's why it's really good to like prepare the family, because it's very personal. It's really a rich and detailed description of the functioning of their family. So you should not, as a provider, be able to answer almost any of these questions that you're asking the family. The family's going to have to answer them for you. So if the family's quiet, I know this might be a little bit more difficult, or take a little bit longer than you would normally plan, then, but it is important for them to answer the questions. And then that will give you a list of functional family-centered outcomes with that. And then, are you guys all familiar with the ECO-MAP? Does anybody do the ECO-MAP? Nobody does.
It's not, yeah, it's not something we've really focused on doing, but instead just really asking the questions about mostly who's in the home. And then, but we do not do an ECO-MAP like this.
Okay. Are you interested in hearing about the ECO-MAP, or should I skip over it?
I like the idea of it because I think that we can also ask these questions throughout the RBI to figure out who's part of that. So I think it's an important piece.
Okay, I do too. So I just didn't want to include it. So I have a video too, and it's really helpful. So when you walk into those homes that sometimes you don't know who everybody is, it's really good to be have an ECO-MAP and just say, hey, I really would like to get to know your family better. And you can do this at the beginning of the services, or you can do it at any time while you're doing your services. Let's say you've already had your initial IFSP and you're really just wondering what's going on. You know, maybe mom is, you know, has some couch surfers on her, you know, in her home, and you just don't know who's there. It's really, it's kind of an olive branch to say, I'd really like to get to know you better and what your resources are. So let's talk about this. And so I have a really good, I have a video that I want to share. And it just kind of goes over how you could, how you can actually talk about it. Let me see where it is. Oh, here it is. And it's really good about just kind of talking about, I really want to understand what is happening with you. Can you guys can't see that, can you? Can you see my, what are you seeing right now? My screen, my PowerPoint?
We are seeing a, yeah, ECO-MAP in action.
Oh, okay. See, so you're seeing my other screen. That's so funny. I didn't know that would happen. So, okay. So, yeah, so I had started this. So what they had done is they started with asking like, who's in the family? I'll start it over, but it's only a 6-minute video. And it's really good about just kind of talking to the parent and how you would like ask these questions, especially if you're really curious about what's happening or if there's been a relationship change for the family. Or anything like that. So let me make sure that I have my sound on.
Okay, great. And why was he referred
Can you hear
for
that?
services?
Well, Bryce was born with Down syndrome.
Okay. So who else lives in the home?
It's me and my husband,
Okay. And your first name?
Gina,
Okay, Gina. And what is your husband's first name?
George.
Does anyone else live in the home with you?
Well, I have a daughter from a previous marriage. Her name is Annabelle, and she's 7.
Okay, so that's everybody that lives in the home.
Mhm.
Okay. So I'm going to ask about other people in your lives, and I'm going to put their information outside of this center box. And as I go along, based on the information that you share with me, I'll be drawing some lines from the center box to those people. The lines are going to indicate the strength of the relationship between you, your family, and others. But feel free to let me know if I'm on target or not with those lines. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your family? Are your parents alive?
My mom is living, and she lives in Florida.
Okay. How often do you see her?
Oh gosh, not as much as I'd like to. She comes to visit maybe 3 times a year.
Okay, but how often do you talk to her?
Oh, every day, sometimes twice a day.
And how do those conversations go?
Oh, it's great. I wish she lived closer to us. I really rely on her advice, and I just miss seeing her and our family as they grow.
I'm going to draw a bold line, as it seems as though your mom plays a large role in your life. Now, what about siblings?
I have 2 brothers.
Do they live locally?
My brother James lives right down the street from us. He's single, and he usually only calls me when he needs me to walk his dog. My other brother lives in Pennsylvania. He has a family, so we don't see each other very often, but we Facebook message each other almost daily.
So I'm thinking I'm gonna draw thin lines as you're not in contact as much with your brothers. Sounds like they're kind of busy with their own lives. So tell me about your husband's family.
George's parents live locally, maybe about 20 minutes from us, and we see them pretty frequently. They're always willing to babysit for us. George also has 2 sisters, Annie and Trish. Annie actually watches Bryce 2 days a week while I work.
Oh, so you work outside the home?
Yes, I work 2 days per week as a graphic designer.
Do you like your job?
I do. It actually is the best of both worlds. I feel like I have adult companionship, and also I'm doing great things for Bryce and Annabelle.
Okay. Is there anyone at work that you do things with outside of that work environment?
Yeah, I have a great friend named Annette. She and I go out for happy hour a couple of times a month. Plus, when I'm in a pinch, she's willing to watch Bryce and Annabelle. She has a daughter about the same age as Annabelle, so it's great.
Now tell me about George's work.
George works in the city as a financial planner. He works really long hours, and I'd say his work is pretty stressful.
Anyone at George's office that he socializes with outside the workday?
Not really. They might do lunches, but when he leaves work, he leaves it behind him.
So financially, do your jobs pay the bills?
Yes, we are doing okay financially.
So let's go back a little and talk about your community. Do you live in like a neighborhood or what's it like?
Yeah, we live in a community pretty close to Annabelle's school. So we do a lot of activity.
Okay, so with that, do you have any questions? So that's a good way to really get to know a family's resources, honestly, as far as like, if they're not, I mean, you clearly know where they live because we go to their homes, so you know what their neighborhood is like, but getting to know what they do outside of work, who watches the child, which you know will sometimes know, but maybe not always know. Families, it really depends on families, how much they share with you, how much they're willing to, you know, just divulge up front. How comfortable they are with you, how much they trust you right off the bat. So, and I think trust is probably my biggest thing about this whole early intervention and working with their child, and is really building that trust piece. So, but yeah, as they go on, she just really asks, you know, just really non-invasive to me questions about what's happening in their life. And she seems truly interested because she's writing it down. So that's kind of the advantages of an eco map. We'll go back to, is the PowerPoint back up? Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's kind of like the eco map. Again, if you're interested in that, I can give you resources to see other eco maps, or even kind of look at how they're made. Clearly, my next slide is one that was made by that was in Robin's book. That I have used before, and that Michelle just happened to be there. That's not really me. Yeah, and then just kind of how those lines really indicate the kind of relationship they are, whether they're strong or whether they are reciprocal or whether they're weak or whether they're stressful. Sometimes you have one that's strong and stressful, like maybe in-laws that watch their child, and you know they feel judged, but yet they need them to watch their child. So that's kind of a twofold thing. So again, just really knowing the family dynamics really helps you in working with the child. So when you get to the outcomes, because again, this should really produce a lot of, RBI should produce a lot of outcomes. The outcomes should be based on family and child functioning. So don't be afraid to put in there that, you know, that the family will also be a part of some of these outcomes. So many times we see only child-centered outcomes of the child will do this. We will know we're successful when the child does this or when the child does that. But keeping in mind, this child does not raise themselves. They don't change their own diapers. They don't give themselves baths. They don't. So it's really a family thing. So we really, you know, looking for some of those family aspects when you're looking at outcomes is really important. It is a reflection of the child's present abilities. So where they are at that moment and where you want them to be in the next 6 months or so. So, and it should represent the family's strengths and resources. So the things that they're really good at. So we want to really focus on not everything that's going wrong with the family, but what also would be going right with the family, like the things that are going well. I usually try to leave every one of my visits with some kind of positive note to the family about what their child's doing, what they weren't doing last week, what they're doing now. Not always easy when you have a child who's slow to make progress, but it is really important for the family to know that they're doing a good job, or that they are, really doing everything that they can to help their child. Because when a family has a child with a disability, they almost, 99% of the times they're going to look inside and say, what did I do wrong? Did I do something to cause this? Did I, do something, mom, maybe did I, do something during pregnancy? Did I, not? Did I do something wrong? So, so helping them understand, giving them that confidence and that competence is really important, to make a connection with the family. What I do love about Kansas is that you guys have that blended model. So a lot of times you guys have, is the provider is the service coordinator. Is that right? You guys still do it that way? Yeah. And I love that. I love that model. Missouri does not do it that way. And I hate the fact that the family has to have, like, they might like share all of this information with one person, and then another person steps in and they're just like, well, I just shared all of this really personal information with that other person, and now you want to ask me the same questions. And it's just really hard to hand off that information. It can be done. It's just, it takes that second person, I think, a little bit longer to build that relationship, because that first person is that first connection to help in an early intervention program. But I do like the way that Kansas does it. I like that a lot. Okay. So when we're talking about family engagement, oopsie daisy, we're talking about first impressions. Again, that's where I was getting to with that family engagement piece. Really, that first impression, the context, the conversations you have with the family, how you present yourself, how you walk in a very non-judgmental way, especially if the house is dirty or there's a lot of dogs, or the child isn't clean, or just some things that we might look down upon. That they sense that, they see that, they can do that. So it's really important for an open communication with the family, to kind of keep yourself in a place where you're just kind of being open and non-judgmental with the family. And definitely from the very first, in the very beginning, is making them feel empowered. Again, this is where that RBI says, this is about you and what you want for your child. This isn't about me, what I found on an evaluation. This is your child is eligible because of the evaluation, but now it's up to you. It's up to you to do the work. It's up to you to make the outcomes. It's up to you. Because when they think that we're going to come in and solve all their problems, then suddenly they're handing you their child and say, well, fix my child. You said they have this deficit, or they have this or that. Here, now you fix them. They have sensory issues, you fix them. But you have to let them know this is not, you're willing to help, obviously, but as a family engagement piece, they're in charge. You are empowered. You have to do this. I will help you do this, but you have to be the one that does this. So it's really powerful for them to know that. I work with, so I'm going to kind of put in little personal stories that I have. I'm working with a 19-year-old. She was in foster care and still is in foster care, and she now has an 8-month-old. She's in transitional housing. So I just started working with her in December, and I met with her like the very last week in December, and then she didn't have any formula, and it was New Year's Eve. And so what I did was, I did not want to see that child go New Year's Eve, especially because there was some bad weather coming in, without formula or anything to eat. So I went to Target and I bought her 2 cans of formula, and I took them to her house on New Year's Eve day, and I dropped them off. But after that, she started calling me and saying, hey, I don't have any formula. And that was when I was just like, well, what you're going to need to do is contact your children's division worker or the food pantry and do that. And I'm telling her, that, okay, I helped you because I really felt like that was, and she knows that. And we have a really good connection now. It's been 2 months, and she shares almost everything with me, and it's only been 2 months, but she is also one of those that's been through the system. She's very guarded with what she says, but I was willing to help, but I was also willing to step back and say, okay, now you have to do this on your own. So let me show you how to do that, because sometimes they don't know, believe it or not, sometimes they don't know how to call the WIC office. Sometimes they don't know how to get in touch with a resource that will help them get the things that they need. So that's that whole family engagement piece of like, this is still, you're 19 and you had this baby, but you're a good mom and you can do this. That's what I tell her. You can do this. If you need any help, let me know. I'm happy to help. But you're going to have to do this. And she's very invested in like breaking the cycle of not having her daughter come into care. She, was very upfront with me when I come in if something didn't go right in the last week. Very invested in the child's progress. But part of that was just also saying, I'm not going to fix all of your problems, but I am going to help you understand that you can fix your child. You can do this. You're very capable of doing all of these things that we're talking about, all of these things that you want for your child. So I think that's really important. Again, that goes back to you. She's the expert on her child. I come in, one time per week and I help the child, get up on all fours to crawl or roll over or, say mama, baba, dada. But it's up to her to continue all of that when I'm not there. And we have that consistent collaboration with the family about what's working, what isn't working. She'll be like, oh, well, I tried this and this didn't work at all. She kept falling down. What else can I do? Those kind of things. So it's really important to not walk in and say, okay, this is what we're going to do next. Because I always come in, I'm like, okay, what are we going to do today? What's little Mayana doing right now? And what do you want her to do? What do we need to work on this week? And she tells me, this is what we want to work on. She's not eating any food. She's not eating from a spoon. Okay, well, let's do that. Let's do that today. So I think she feels like when I walk in, she's just like, oh, I'm so glad you're here. And it's a nice feeling to know that you're appreciated and that she wants your help, those kind of things. But I also, again, I'm not going to do it for her. She has to be there and do it herself. So are there any questions with that? No. Okay. I just want to, sometimes in early intervention, and it's easy to do, we kind of walk in and we want to save the child or save the family from what's happening. And believe me, I totally get that. I am such a bleeding heart when it comes to a baby. But I also know that nothing's going to change if I just help the baby without helping the parents. There's nothing that's going to change with that. It's just going to stay the same. So, so again, that consistent collaboration, developing relationships, that whole family engagement piece is really important with families. Yeah, I have a video that I would like to show. It's a video I show every time, so I was kind of on the fence on whether or not I wanted to show it today because it looks a little rehearsed, but it's a parent who had a child in the early intervention program when it was very traditional, when you had a need, you brought in a service. So the child needed had a motor need, you brought in a physical therapist. Child had a speech need, you brought in a speech therapist. And the parent was just kind of there like, oh, okay. And they were always telling her what she needed to do. And then the second one was just like, okay, what do you want to work on? More of that multidisciplinary approach. What do you want to work on? Where do you want to go from here? And how much she liked that approach better. So I guess I'll show it. Let's see. Okay, can you see this video here? Okay, so it's just 2 minutes and 44 seconds. So let me know if you can't hear it.
Joy, thank you for meeting me on your lunch break. I really appreciate it.
Can you hear it?
I came to ask you a few questions. I know you had 2 children in early intervention. You had Alex, and we worked together quite a few years ago with Alex. And then the last child you had in early intervention was Christine. With Alex, what I really wanted to find out from you is the difference between the 2 times you were in early intervention. I know with Alex, we never did a routines-based interview. And then with Christine, we did one. Actually, we did 2 routines-based interviews. What was the difference that you felt was between the 2 times you got services through EI?
I felt that with Alex, the expert was the therapist because we were not really involved because it was always them making plans and strategies for Alex. But with Christine, we saw the difference because we were involved in the planning and the strategy, and we had the opportunity to practice with Christine in her daily life. So we see a lot more improvement with Christine than with Alex. She learned faster.
And I know we discussed this, a few months ago with Christine. You felt like she made some improvements much quicker, but her actual frequency of services was much less than Alex.
Yes, absolutely. Because with Christine, with the routine-based interview, we were more involved. So we were able to practice doing things with her, and we could incorporate all these strategies in our daily lives.
So when you look at the two services without doing a routines-based interview, where we really kind of focused on Alex only, and the difference with Christine, where we really focused on everyone in the house, what do you think worked better for you?
I think the one with the routine-based interview, because every single member of the family could pitch in and help and improve, making ways for improvement for Christine.
Well, thank you again, Joy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, any thoughts about that video?
You can easily train yourself to listen faster.
Ooh.
If you are able to listen fast, you can consume more information.
Hello.
Did I lose you? Where are you?
We're here.
Oh, there you are. You guys did this little square.
I don't know what that was. It's true though,
I was like, is there a man on here? I like looked at everyone's pictures looking to see if we had a man on.
No, it's one of those things you can train yourself to listen faster. My daughter never listens to like videos or books or anything on regular speed. It's always like 1.5 speed or something.
Oh,
so
wow.
She says it helps her gain information better. Anyway, back to the video. I was just going to make a comment that, being in infant toddlers for this long, there are some times that we do encounter like families that maybe we did see a long time ago, like they have a large family or they've had a baby like 10 years later. But I can definitely say, I feel like, gosh, it's so rare nowadays because we've been doing, coaching for so long. I think it's like we're going on like 6 to 8 years or so, that thankfully we encounter that like pretty minimally, I would say. So
yeah, that's great. I agree with that whole idea. And universities and colleges are also training more about parent education and really empowering parents in that birth to 3. Did we have any students here? Is it Honor? Are you the one that's a student?
Yes. So Anna, and I don't know if she'll be able to unmute. I'm not sure if she's driving or not.
I'm here,
there she is.
Yeah,
so yeah, she's a KU student also. So I'll mute myself.
Are they training you with any of that? Is that part of the evidence-based practice piece that you're learning?
Yes, we are learning very, very heavily about the parent coaching model and how to utilize all the different questions that you can use throughout conducting like an RBI, as far as like promoting reflection or awareness, or just how to go about gaining information. Like we've talked about the eco maps that you were referring to, just things along those lines that are we're really parent empowering based and focused. And I don't know, I think Jordan is here as well. Yes, she is. And she's a KU student as well. We both are in the same early intervention program, so maybe she can attest to things as well if she's here.
Yeah, I think what Anna said is completely correct. It's definitely more specialized though. Like we're in our own like early intervention little 5-person class. So I think, we're just taking our own classes for early intervention while other people are taking like just regular classes and stuff like that. So it just depends on if you know that you want early intervention, then you take the early intervention classes. And if you don't know, then you try and you take them anyway.
Well, that's good. I didn't know that they had an actual track for early intervention now. So you're in speech?
Yeah, Anna and I are both in the SLP cohort right now at KU. So yeah,
Awesome. I had heard that OT was doing some of that parent education, parent coaching track too, but that was like at Rockhurst or something like that. I'm not sure at KU, but yeah, there was some OT students that were telling me that. So I'm so glad to hear that because again, well, I'm also the president of Missouri's Association of Infant Mental Health. So kind of getting on, being aware of parents, understanding family theories, reflective practices, those kind of things is really important in working with families. So especially families of differing needs. So it is really important. So that's great. That's good to hear. All right, I'm gonna go. Oops, that was the wrong one. Yes. Okay. Sorry. I keep trying to change it so that you guys don't necessarily see my notes the next one, but I guess it doesn't matter. Okay. So now we're going to jump into preparing for the RBI. And the reason why we prepare for the RBI, and again, this is a Robin's model where you actually, and if you have ever seen Robin McWilliam in person, he, oh gosh, how would I describe him? He's a very blunt person. He's very direct. He'll let you know exactly what he thinks about things, whether you want to hear it or not. But if it is about his model, he'll tell you exactly what he thinks. And in his world, you have just an appointment for an RBI, a routine-based interview. And that's all going forward. And so it isn't done in with another evaluation. It isn't done, it's done completely by itself. So this is, again, his theory of what to do with a routine-based interview is that when you're scheduling with the family, you're informing them of what the discussion is going to look like, that you're going to be talking about their routines, that you're going to be kind of diving in deeper into their daily activities. You're going to definitely explain the purpose of the interview. So that you're actually understanding that the whole purpose of this interview is for them to come up with their own priorities for an early intervention plan. So that is really the purpose of the RBI for the family. You can let the family know that their children don't have to be present, kind of like at an IFSP if you're doing like a 6-month or an annual with the service coordinator, which again, you guys are the service coordinators. You can also the child doesn't necessarily have to be there for an IFSP, meaning they don't necessarily have to be there for a routine-based interview either. And that the family can invite anyone that they want. So if it's grandma who watches the child during the day, or a neighbor, or whoever that they want for support can also be there. So those are some of the things that he talks about with preparing for the RBI. Now, I know that most states who use the routine-based interview do not have a separate appointment for just the routine-based interview. And I believe you guys combine that with your evaluation. Is that right? Do you guys do the evaluation and the routine-based interview at the same time? Okay. So I see some yeses. So
yes.
Okay, thank you. So again, that's his theory, is that it should be a separate appointment, but in theory, like I said, in theory, it should be a separate appointment. In practice, it always looks different because everyday life doesn't always happen the way Robin McWilliam thinks it should. So also you're trying to get to know the family. You're conducting the interview in the most comfortable way for them. So if they have a preferred learning style, it might be a good time to ask, what is your, do you take in information better by seeing it or by hearing it? Because if somebody were to ask me, I'd be like, I definitely do better if I can read something, or if you give me like, if I know what I need to do, I need to kind of see it. I'm a very visual learner, and some people are an auditory learner, but if they're not an auditory learner and you're coming and you're talking to them, they might not be in the best place either to answer all of your questions either. So maybe even having a list of questions for them or something like that. Ask the family if they have any questions or concerns prior to starting the interview. Like, do you have any problems with sharing this information? Of course, most families are like, no, I'm in an early intervention program. I'm pretty sure you're not going to ask anything that I can't share with you about my child. So, and then the huge thing is let them know that you're going to be taking notes, and they are welcome to review the notes at any time. So I still use paper and pen when I'm in a family's home. I know I work with plenty of speech therapists, PTs, OTs that bring in a computer or like an iPad and take their notes while we're there. I still feel like I'll just leave my notes just like out on the floor when I'm playing with the child. So if they want to see them, that's fine too. It's a huge thing for trust building is letting them see your notes so that they know you're not writing down things like, oh, dirty house, or something like that, or there's, roaches, bugs, there's, dirty dishes, or it smells, or something like that, that they know exactly what you're writing. It's a trust building thing for him. So, so it is really important. Again, I always just lay my notes down, and families know, if they wanted to glance at my notes or read them, I really don't care. They can do that. So that's kind of a trust building thing for him, is making sure that they understand that you're there totally to support them and not to be that person that's going to judge them, or, you're going to kind of work from where they are. So when you're introducing the RBI, again, this is when he sets it as a separate appointment, and you're only doing the RBI during this time. You're going to review the purpose and the process of the interview. You're going to confirm with the family what their main concern is. So again, what is your main concern? Usually it'll be like, they're not talking, they're not walking, I can't get them to eat, those kind of things. Again, going back to the eco map, ask who is in the family. That's really important, so that, you're not like, who's dad? It's like, and I'm sure you all do that too. It's like, who's in the family, who lives here, those kind of things. Explain the purpose of taking notes, and again, offer the family to see them throughout the interview, because the purpose of you taking notes is so that you can get, like, when you see Robin McWilliam do a routine-based interview, he probably has 5 pages of notes, and he's sitting right there with them, writing all of his notes down. And then he actually, at the end of it, will give the notes to the family and say, okay, tell me, this is what this is what I got from our interview. Tell me what you want to work on. So, and I'm going to show some video of an RBI that he did. And of course the family is only going to share what they want to share. They can leave out anything that they feel is too personal, or that they're not willing to share at that point. Because how many of us know that's the hard thing about doing a routine-based interview at the beginning? Because I would be the same way. If you come into my house, I would be more reserved than if I get to know you after 3 months and I see that you're coming in and that you're really helping me. I'm going to share more with you then, because I'm going to trust you more. But at the beginning, you want to make sure that you are introducing the RBI. So, I do want to stop real quick and do a video of Robin. He has this video on YouTube now. It used to be on a different, I can't find it. Okay, I'll have to find it when we take a break. It's this one. Yeah, here it is. I found it. Can you see my screen? Can you see Robin McWilliam on the screen? Okay. So here he is. He starts out with this family, and he'll tell you, I know virtually nothing about this family. But again, Robin is does it in an appointment. There's no kids around, there's no dogs barking, ringing phones, people dropping off packages at the door. So it's not, to me, it's not real life, because we all know that when you're in a family's home, that it's way different than sitting down with them at a table with an audience watching you conduct an interview. So I totally get that, but it's good to watch his kind of what he's doing and how he introduces the interview. So I'm going to play this for a little bit.
I know virtually nothing about this family on purpose. They told me a little bit, but I'm going to ask them again. So you can see how the RBI can be used right from the very beginning. And first, I'm going to be doing the eco map, and you'll kind of follow along and see how this works. And after the eco map, then we get into the actual RBI. Okay. All right. Hi guys. Hello. So thank you for coming in. The purpose for our getting together today is first for me to understand what all your resources are, so that when we're working with you, we know who we can call upon, or who's already involved in your life. And then we'll go through the day, through your day, to find out how things are going with your family, so that at the end of it, you can pick goals to work on. Is that okay? All right. If there's anything that you don't want to say, don't say it, or lie. I'll never know the difference. We should be done in a couple of hours. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's start with Jason and Sarah. You guys live in the same home, right? Yep. Yes. Who else lives in the home with you?
Our daughter and her dog.
Okay. What's your daughter's name?
Alyssa.
How do you spell it?
ALYSSA.
Okay. And how old is Alyssa?
She's 14 months.
Okay. And she's in early intervention?
Yes.
And why is she in early intervention?
So she was born with a bunch of abnormalities, and spent the first 7.5 months in the hospital. So she was born at University of Maryland, then transitioned to Mount Washington for another 1.5 months. And so she came home. She was delayed with a lot of her, gross motor skills, fine motor skills.
What are gross motor skills?
So she was behind in terms of crawling, doing all the I guess, this is our first baby, so I don't know exactly what they're supposed to be doing until we kind of see it in our own daughter.
Yeah.
But she was behind in all that. She was slow to, do all that. She basically on her back, the hospital, or sitting up, not really doing a whole lot.
Okay. So she was born with some conditions that have resulted in her being behind. Is that right?
Yeah.
Was it ever a name given to like a diagnosis?
They never really figured that out. We did some, they actually paid for a full genome testing to try and figure out what was going on, because she had so many, what they call midline deformities. She had an omphalocele, which is where your intestines and whatnot are not enclosed within your stomach wall. And then that usually is associated with having other abnormalities as well. So she had a cleft lip and palate, and she developed an aortic coarctation right before she was born. She had a left congenital diaphragmatic hernia. So she had a lot of lung issues. Those are usually associated with some more serious diseases, I guess.
Syndromes, they
Yes.
associate a lot of it as a syndrome.
So they were looking for a syndrome, but they didn't find
haven't
it.
found
everything.
So it all had, well, not all, but it had a lot to do with midline deformities or things hadn't finished forming.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So we had a lot of concerns that, she might not be there mentally. She was behind to begin with. So they wanted to, doctors want to know why things are going on. So they tested it, and she had a couple small mutations, single gene mutations, but they don't account for anything that would associate with these kind of things.
Got it.
So who knows?
Yeah. It's Alyssa.
Yes.
Yeah. And what's the dog's name?
Maddie.
And what kind of dog is this?
She's a miniature golden doodle.
Oh yeah, nice.
Cute, friendly little dog.
Yeah.
Loves to jump up on her OT. Friends.
Okay, so where do you guys live?
We live in Columbia.
Okay, and did you grow up there? No.
Maddie.
And what kind of dog? Okay.
Okay. So that just kind of gives you some general idea how he introduces the RBI. Dad, so I'm going to use this as we go through the RBI and kind of just pull out the little sections that we're talking about, so that you can see how he does it. Again, because he does it differently, to fidelity, to his idea of fidelity. Introducing it. So this family, the dad stays home with the baby and mom works. just because it worked out better for them that way when the child came home and they didn't feel like somebody else could take care of it. She also has 24-hour nursing care. So you'll get some of that information too. But he generally just asks, hey, what do you know? So did you notice that he asked, so what's gross motor? Because sometimes families with a child with a lot of medical conditions will repeat what the doctor says, but they don't necessarily understand what it is. They just tell you that that's what it is. Oh, she has some gross motor. Well, she can't crawl, but he wasn't sure exactly what all that was. So, but they have an OT in the home. So that's how he gets started with the OT. I mean, with the family. Let me get back on here. So he asks who's in the family. He talked about the dog. He likes to include everybody. Confirm with the family what their main concern was, that she was going to be behind. He was going to then explain the purpose of taking notes, which I'll show you later, and that they can see them and then only share what they want to share, kind of thing. So, I think I did that already. So, so when he starts with the family, so I'm going to go past like when he's doing the eco map, and we're going to talk about how he shows that the interview is about the whole family. So he'll always ask this one's a little bit harder because there are no siblings. I wish there were some siblings in there so that he could then ask about what the siblings are doing, because sometimes we do forget about that. We'll ask about what the parents are doing, but not necessarily, what's happening with the siblings. And that's a huge relationship for anyone, really. So that's really important. Be sure to let the family finish speaking before replying or encouraging them to back up or provide more detail. So when you're getting started, don't cut them off. Like I could see where, he was waiting for the dad to stop talking. And let him finish so that he could kind of move on. When he starts the interview, he'll talk about how the parents' day begins, not necessarily the child. Like, when do you guys wake up? Actively include all parents and people being interviewed. Ask what everyone else is doing. And then he's going to talk about being on a scale of 1 to 10. So when you get to the end of a routine, he's going to, and this is really important, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like this time of day? And that really does give you a clear number, because if the family goes on and on and on about how it's a fine routine, morning is fine, and then you say, so if you had to give that a rating of 1 to 5, 1 being poor and 5 being great, what would you give it? And they turn around and give it a 2, then you might need to go back and ask a few more questions about what's happening. It's fine. I'd probably give it a 2. Okay, well, what could we do to make that morning time better? What would happen if that was better for you? So that kind of thing. Do any of you use that scale of 1 to 5 in your interviews?
Hey, Michelle, this is Monica. I've been doing, not now because of Omicron, but quite a few observations of evals in the fall. And it's interesting because when I'm there, people try and do it. And then they're like, well, I don't ever do this, but I'm doing it because you're there, which is fine. But what I've noticed is they ask it, and then it's like, well, then what do I do with the information? But so I don't think we're doing it as a whole very often. And mostly it's because we don't know what that next step looks like then once they rate it. So that's kind of how we leave it.
Perfect. Well, that's good information to know. That's very good. Thank you. Yeah. So sometimes it isn't just about what that rating is. You're looking for that rating to be kind of consistent with the information that the family told you. So again, if the family's like, well, it's fine, it could be better, it could be worse, I give it a 3, then you're like, okay, well, are there things that we could do, that would make that more helpful for you? Like if little Johnny didn't cry the minute that he woke up until you left, until breakfast was served, would that be helpful? Would that make it a 4? Or you would ask them, what would make it a 4? What would make it a 5? If, what would it take for that routine to be, rated higher? So that kind of gives you that kind of catapults you into that conversation about like, what can you do to make it better? And if they give it a 5, which sometimes families will, they'll be like, oh, it's fine, it's a 5. Oh, it's fine, it's a 5. I don't know if you guys have ever worked with those families. I have. They're like, oh, everything's fine. Oh, it's fine, it's a 5. Okay, so that would also be like, okay, so if this is going, you know, if you feel like this is going perfectly good, that's great. What would you like to see her doing next? What would you like to see her? What would you like to see happening next at breakfast time? Would you like her to see her feeding herself? You know, so if it's all going great, what would be the next steps for you to move forward? So you kind of use that, like I said, as kind of a springboard to kind of ask more questions, especially if it doesn't align with the information that you said. So I'm going to go back to the video real quick and see if, because he'll talk about that, and it's really interesting. This family's really fun and funny, so it is a good one, but he goes a long time on that. Let me see. Yeah. Let's try here.
I mean, we want us to be able to live as normal.
Okay.
I will do it. You know, we had problems when Melissa had a PICU visit. She was calling their attending and giving them her opinion about how that went and things like that. So she's a very strong advocate for our family.
Okay.
She also has a star helmet. I don't know if it needs to be mentioned on there, but when she was straight, she was on her back for 2 weeks without them allowing her to move. And when you're that young, the head was so malleable that the back of her head was very flat.
Yeah.
So she still wears that.
Okay. How's that going?
We really liked how it rounded out the back of her head. Maybe not the top part of this. It's a little flatter than we would have liked. She hasn't grown her head size in the last 2 months, so it hasn't done anything. So in the summer, she gets sweaty. You know, Sarah doesn't like it anymore. She wants to get rid of it.
I'm over it.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
over it.
So when you look at this picture, what do you think?
Keeps busy.
Yeah, so that's a picture of the eco map that he's
A lot of
sharing.
people.
We have a lot of support.
You have a lot of support from your families and friends, it looks like. You also have a lot of professionals you're dealing with. And if we do early intervention right, we would not complicate your life by adding too many extras. If we do it right.
Okay.
Okay. So let's now go through your day. Okay. And how does your day start?
Sarah wakes me up when she gets up.
Well, before we get in actually into how it starts, what are your main concerns for Alyssa and your family?
Okay. I mean, we want Alyssa to be able to live as normal life as she can. So I don't know how realistic that is. I think it's much more realistic than we initially thought it was. But we just want what's best for her, what can help her get to where we think she can get to.
Okay. And so when you look at how she is now and your desire for her to have as normal life as possible, what are the things that you're mostly thinking need to improve or develop or something like that?
I think feeding is a big one.
Yeah.
Feeding.
And
Which-
speech.
Feeding, speech, and then getting the trach out so that we can drive in the car with her without having somebody in the back, so that we can not have night nursing, so that we can just, have the baby monitor and wake up when she lets us know, that kind of life. Of
Yeah, more
the-
normal
Yeah.
parenting kind of
Yeah.
life. Okay. Normal. Yeah. All right. So how does your day begin?
So we tend to sleep in a little bit. I definitely tend to sleep in just because if something were to happen with the nurse where they call out, a lot of times we don't get replacements. So I end up taking shifts they miss. And they tend to be the night shifts. So I try to keep myself awake enough so that if that does happen, I'm awake and able to watch her as long as I can. Because since Sarah's working full time, I try not to, if that were to happen, I try to stay awake till 4 or 5 a.m. and then let Sarah get up. Ideally at 6, she can start working.
So this is when there's not a nurse,
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And how often does that happen?
Every other Saturday night and randomly throughout the week, I guess.
It might happen once or twice a week.
It
During the
could,
week?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it could be a day shift, it could be night shifts, just never really know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very unplanned.
Yeah, we actually fired one of our nurses last Saturday. I walked in on her sleeping again. So unfortunately, she was our Wednesday, Friday, Saturday night nurse. They filled the Wednesday shift, but it took a long time initially to even get the Friday, Saturday nights. You know, people have lives too. They don't like working Friday, Saturday nights. So see how long that takes to place.
So if you have to stay awake, you also are then in charge of Alyssa. Well, there might be a nurse there during the day, right? So can you catch up on sleep? through the
Yeah,
day?
so we allow the nurses to sign the other nurses.
All right.
So the
I'm just
main
moving it
goal right
forward.
now is to try and limit her vomiting.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so there are a number of things that she is doing, some things she's not doing yet, even at this waking up time. On a scale of, and who's usually, are you usually the one who goes and kind of wakes her up because you're getting ready for work, or how does this work?
I mean, we let her wake up on her own time. We're not sticklers for any kind of schedule right now.
Right.
We don't have nursing from 6 to 10 p.m. So we like her to be awake then. We can play with her. So she usually falls asleep at 10 and then she wakes up when she wakes up.
Right.
If we have to go somewhere, I guess it depends on which one of us is ready. And, we like to let the nurses know what's going on and they help us. Like, well, if she's not awake by 9:50, let's wake her up and change her and whatnot. So the nurses tend to do a lot of that too.
Okay.
But I'm usually the one that is the first to check in on the nurse and Alyssa, whether if I'm
you're
getting,
usually the one, yeah.
yeah, I usually am.
Yes.
So if I'm working from home, then I'll pop in as soon as I wake up. If I'm getting ready for work, I'll pop in as I'm getting ready, just to check in. We kind of go over what's happening for the day, the schedule, if she has a doctor's appointment, when to get her ready by, if she needs a bath. Like we talk about all those different things. How did she do over the night?
How often do you get to work from home?
Usually 2 days a week.
Oh, yeah?
And then I have flexibility with my work that if I need to work from home, any of the other days I can.
Yeah.
My work has been awesome with flexibility and allowing me to be off whenever I need to be. And
That's very good.
yeah, it's a fantastic situation. It's the best as it could be. Yeah.
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 Okay, so between the two of you then, on a scale of 1 to 5, how do you like this waking up time? With 1 being terrible and 5 being great.
I mean, I'm comfortable 4 or 5-ish.
Yeah. I would like to see her getting downstairs sooner.
Yeah.
It is something I'd like to see, but it's fine how it is right now because she needs to have that time to kind of work up her secretions and so she isn't throwing up.
Right.
But I would like to see her downstairs
I got it.
sooner.
Okay.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 5, how do you like waking up time?
Yeah, that's fine.
4. Okay. And what comes next?
Okay, so once she's
So
done with
after
that
her
nap
first
or
nap,
she's ready to go downstairs, we'll
Okay, so that's how he does it. And then sometimes he moves forward like that. Because you'll see like in other routines, he'll ask for a number and then he'll say, well, what would make that better? Because she already gave him what would make that better. And that would be for her to be able to get downstairs sooner. So, so he gave her that. And that's really what the rating is going for. It's really looking for an outcome, like how do you make that better? Because those are actually going to be some of those priorities when the family's telling you, I'd really like to see this happen next, or I'd really like to be able to do this, but I can't yet. So that's what would make it a 5. So those are kind of like what naturally becomes those functional outcomes that you're looking for on an IFSP. Very family oriented, very, family driven. So again, that's the reason for the rating. And I know the rating can be hard and I don't see a whole lot of the ratings, but Missouri's not doing the RBI anymore. So for whatever reason, I don't know what Missouri does.
Interesting, Michelle.
Yeah.
Interesting. Is there a
their
method?
family assessment piece?
Did they?
Well, there's been there's been a whole lot of transition from DESE of the Department of Early Childhood, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, branching off into this Office of Childhood and then bringing in all of our early learning programs and home visiting programs under one Office of Childhood. And so with that, there's been a lot of transition. They're trying to make some kind of a unified system, which again goes back into looking at each one of the programs and trying to develop something. Honestly, I don't know what they're thinking, but I'm not there anymore. I don't know.
Fair enough.
I don't know the reasons behind it, but they do what they do. So
We will not put this on Missouri's public education, this recording on their public education site.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I think they pretty much know how I feel. Okay, so that was getting started. So we were going to do like a group activity if we were face to face, but it's really hard to do when you're doing this. And it would be kind of a role play where you would actually put yourself, you would pair up, and one would be the parent and one would be the interviewer or the RBI interviewer, and kind of go through, because I think it's really insightful to have these questions asked of you, and kind of how that looks for your family. And it kind of gives you a different perspective of when you're asking a family these same questions of how to do it in kind of a non-intrusive way, so that you're just kind of having a conversation about it and not feeling like judged. Like, let's just say, you bring your baby to bed with you in the morning and then they lay with you, and nothing wrong with that, but you know what I'm saying? It's different things that you might feel like, well, I don't know if I want to share that with everyone, kind of what we do in the morning kind of a thing. Anyway, it's a really good, insightful kind of way to put yourself in someone else's chair and understand that if those questions are asked of you, what that might feel like. If someone's asking about your day throughout your entire day and going over everything that you do with your child. So since we can't do that, what time is it? 9:48. We're going to take a quick break. Let's take a break until 10 o'clock. And then we can come back and probably finish up around 11:15 or so. If that works for everybody. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a break. Okay. When I put this up now, I can't see any of you, but can you see is this in like a presenter mode, or is this in,
So now we see your slide, your structure slide, and we see your notes, and then we see on the side your like upcoming PowerPoint.
okay. So let me stop share and see if I can get, I don't know why. Let's try this one. It does the same thing. Okay. Okay. So I was just going to go on. Is everybody on? Because now I can't see anybody.
I would say yes, we're all on except for Jen. It does not have her fancy black and white video backup, but my guess is she can hear us.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so we are going to move on, and we are going to talk about the actual structure of the interview. And within each routine, what we want to know is what is everyone else doing? And then, so we want to make sure that we're getting information about everyone who's in the home and what they're doing. And then what we want to know about the child is what they can do in regards to engagement, independence, and social relationships. So, and then again, we're going to ask them how satisfied they are with that routine, and then how well this routine is working for the child. Again, that's like a goodness of fit, like how is the child working into, how is that routine fit into the child's ability to function within that, within the family. So some of the home routines he talks about is waking up. He talks about, diaper changing, breakfast, parent getting dressed and ready for work. What does it look like going out to stores, to the grocery store to pick up things that you need? Is the child okay in the store? Especially in the last couple of years with the whole COVID thing, there aren't a lot of kids who go out to stores. There's a lot of parents who will keep their kids at home. So there's not a lot of exposure to that. I've definitely seen some kids with a lot of social and communication delays, I think because of the lack of exposure to other people. But going to the park is kind of the same way. I have a family that says that they go to the park, but only when no one else is there. So the child still doesn't have access to other kids or peers or any other kids. Coming home, dinner prep is usually a big one, bath, TV, bedtime. But he also feels like getting into the classroom routines is really important too. So if the child goes to daycare, how are they doing with, circle time and free play and small toys, and asking those questions? Sometimes parents don't know what's happening in those settings, and sometimes they do. So did I just mess it up? What are you guys seeing now?
Making an eco map.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought. I think I switched it over to the wrong one. Let's try this. What do you see now?
It's a fun game we're playing, Michelle. I see,
What
I
do
see
you
your
see?
structure slide again.
Okay, cool. All right. I showed everything else. I know I'm having trouble because I have a monitor and sometimes it's picking up from the monitor and I don't know why.
It's okay. Zoom and PowerPoint do not interface well together. They don't really cooperate. And videos, it's hard.
It is. It's a little bit, a little bit hard for me today. So, but anyway, okay. So how many of you are able to ask about what happens in the classroom, or what happens, how many of you kind of delve into that part of daycare? Do you guys do that, or do you just really concentrate on what's happening at home?
And then I just finally said,
This is Jessie. I've recently done that just because the child seems to be, as he's gaining things at home, then generalizing that to daycare. And that was causing a big stress for especially his mom. And so we've talked a lot about daycare and planning then to also go to daycare to support the child there too.
Go into daycare at all? Do you guys go to daycares for your visits too? Okay, I do too. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you guys were doing that too. So sometimes it's I see a whole different kid at daycare than I do at home. And that's not unusual. We have kids, that are comfortable at home, our own kids, or, kids that we're around a lot that are more comfortable at home, and then they get to daycare or to school and they act differently. And so I think it is really important to kind of figure out what's happening at daycare. And if you don't get it at the beginning, like in an RBI at the very beginning of, if a parent says, well, I don't really know, a lot of times it's my experience that parents kind of drop a child off and there's not a lot of time to talk. They're getting to work, and then they pick them up and there's a different teacher there, maybe the afternoon teacher, and they don't really know what the child did during the day. Or there's just not enough time to ask. They just pick the child up and go home with whatever else they need to do. And they don't really know a lot of what's going on in childcare. So, but that's a big part of a child's day, especially if they're going Monday through Friday, to know what's happening there. So yeah, I have a little one that is just really struggling in childcare, in getting along with peers, but at home he seems to be doing fine. But so there is, there's that difference. And I think it's really important to kind of know what's happening for them with both times, with both days. That is
Michelle, I was just going to say, sometimes if the problem is primarily at daycare, we'll even meet parents at daycare and do the initial home visit there, and then talk with the teachers and observe the child in the classroom as well.
Nice. Very nice. Very nice. I like that. Yeah, we're not always quite as accommodating as that, but I think that's great. And again, I like that structure that you all have over there where, the service coordinator and the provider can kind of mesh those two roles together. We don't do that as well over here. So I like that.
Don't give him any
So-
ideas to not be as flexible, Michelle.
No, I love it. If I could change Missouri, I would definitely change it to that the primary provider is really also the service coordinator. I just feel like it just goes together so well. So, but all right. So when we're talking about routines, again, you can see all my questions that I would ask, but you're going to ask about the engagement piece. So this engagement, the engagement, independence, and social relationships actually align with the ECHO scores that are out there. And, ECHO, and knowing that those different ECHO buckets need to be asked about and reported on. You guys are still reporting on ECHO, aren't you?
Yes, they're doing ECHO is part of the initial, annual, and exit.
Oh, okay. Okay. They do ours at every annual also. At the initial, the annuals, yeah, and the exits too. So, so these things of how the child is learning through these routines and in terms of engagement, social relationships, and independence really does line up with those ECHO buckets that you have to report on. So what kind of questions would you ask to find out how engaged the child is in an activity? I have my questions right underneath, so you probably can see them, but yeah, so when you're wanting to know how engaged they are, so not just how are things happening to them, but really about how they understand what is going on and how much they take upon themselves to be engaged in that routine. Kind of like getting dressed, you can either, dress a child and they're just doing whatever they need to do without really, while they're still playing with a toy or something like that, or they're actually engaged. They're like trying to put their own pants on or trying to put their own shirt on. So, yeah. So do you guys ask any good questions about that?
Yeah, we'll ask like, how do they participate? Like when you are getting dressed, what part can the child do and what part are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and almost to like, what does the child want to do for themselves? What are they, what do they insist on doing for themselves? Do they bring you their shoes when they want to go outside? That's a piece of engagement. Do they imitate you? Do they imitate others that are in the home? How do you know when they're hungry or frustrated? How do they come up and tell you their needs? That's also an engagement, because as we know, all of these buckets they will all kind of intertwine with each other. But yeah, how they kind of ask for something, how they react to things, how they interact with books, those kind of things is kind of really, because I know you've probably seen those kids that are not really engaged in anything. They're just kind of in their own world and they're just kind of walking around like just kind of observing life instead of being a part of what's happening to them.
I like the how do you know question, because a lot of times, especially for the ones that I'm doing the RBI on, if there's, a communication delay. So if I'm saying, well, how does she tell you that she's hungry? Well, she doesn't tell me she's hungry because, parents automatically think, well, she's not speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the how do you know when she's hungry? Because then that makes them think like, oh, what does she do that I know makes me think she's hungry? Well, she walks into the kitchen and stares at the fridge or, whatever. Like then they start, and then we can talk about how that's gestural communication. But anyway, I like the how do you know? I feel like I use that one a lot for some kiddos. Or how do they, why? Another one I might use is like why. So like, well, why do you take a nap at that time? Or why do you give her a snack after she wakes up from nap? Because you're like, all right, she wakes up and I give her a snack. Oh, how come you give her a snack when she wakes up? So, and then they're like, oh, because I can tell she's hungry because blah, blah, blah. So anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are all really good. Yeah. Or, yeah, I'll often ask parents too, or why do you think she does that? Or why do you think he does that? To kind of get their perception of what the child is thinking. So yeah, so that's kind of a good one too. But yeah, so these are kind of, yeah, really good questions about how they are engaged in their routines. The independence piece, which you guys kind of know is what can they do for themselves? you know, just kind of asking, you know, how much will your child do before they ask for help, and how much, you know, if they want that snack that's up in the, you know, third shelf of the pantry, will they go get it themselves, or will they ask for help? Those kind of things, which kind of, again, goes along with the engagement piece. But this is also too, like, you know, I have some of those little ones that are so independent and not asking for help that, I mean, they put themselves in some very dangerous, precarious situations when they're trying to, you know, climb up cabinets to get to something that they really want. Or, you know, if they put, you know, if the stove is hot or something like that, but they're reaching up there, those kind of things. So this independence too can kind of let you know, do they run off when you go to the store kind of thing? Like they're that independent, like they don't seem to even want to, you know, ask for help for anything. And then there's the social relationships piece, which again is really important. This is a big thing for me because I feel like it gets missed so many times. And this isn't just does your child give you hugs, but you know, social relationships is how are they initiating interactions, and are they initiating any interactions? Like what do they do to interact with a peer or a sibling or a parent, or is it always the parent who's, again, it's kind of catching those that are all kind of in their own world and kind of maybe a first sign of autism. And on this note too, talking about social relationships, have you all seen that they have revised, the American Academy of Pediatrics has revised the developmental milestones? So I need to dive into that. I've seen it a couple times this week, but I have not actually dived into, but it's supposed to be more developmentally appropriate questions for families from pediatricians and from home visitors and things like that. Has anybody else seen it? Have you guys looked at the milestones? Carrie, do you know what's different about it?
I mean, we did have a discussion about some of the speech. We talked about it last week, or this week, I guess it's Friday. We talked on Tuesday that some of the speech milestones are a little conflicting in talking about 50 words by a certain age, but also having 2 words before they have 50. And so just looking at some of those changes and then looking at some of those motor ones. I haven't delved too deep into it yet this week, but you know, keeping that in mind.
They had talked about how like crawling wasn't a milestone. I saw that, so it's caused like a lot of uproar on social media. I know some speech therapists said that they didn't consult with them for the speech CDC guidelines. So that was something that was discussed.
Oh, well, this will all be very interesting. I was going to get into that this afternoon because I was like so excited about it, but I hadn't had any time. And I thought it was going to be a good thing, but clearly we've got some
I was going to say,
information.
I wonder, I haven't looked on ASHA yet, if they've made any like response statements or something, or like a OTs, what is OTs, like ASHA equivalent? I don't know.
That's like
It's AOTA.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm like, it's the
if they like go into their like going and seeing if they've had any like statements, I don't know, be interesting.
I haven't checked, but that's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. I do know that. Do you guys know Carrie Ebert? She's a speech therapist. She came out of Missouri First Steps. I used to work with her a long time ago when I was a service coordinator for First Steps, but you know, she kind of has her own thing going, but she had posted something, I follow her on social media, of it isn't necessarily the number of words, it's the quality of the words that they're saying. And so I didn't know if that had something to do with the developmental milestones, because just the timing of it, I didn't know. So anyway, I follow her to kind of see what she has to say about some things. So, but very interesting. So let's see, ASHA has not updated their norms, but still links the CDC website as a related source. Yeah, and that's what the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics, I think it was that one that had come together to revise those milestones. So we'll see. Again, I was going to kind of dive into those, but that'll kind of make a difference too, and kind of what kind of questions you asked to a certain extent on social relationships. I think social relationships to me is one of the biggest pieces of a child's functioning, because if they can't relate to others, it really doesn't matter if they can string beads or read a book. If they can't engage with other people in their world, it makes it a little bit harder to get through you know, preschool, kindergarten, those kind of things, if you're not looking at other people to help meet your needs. or kind of able to initiate social interactions with other people. So I think it's a big red flag. But do you guys have any anything that you would ask about social relationships that would be real? Because I always am curious about new questions to put on here when you're kind of looking at social relationship with kids, like how do they do with strangers, you know, those kind
Yeah, like if they talk about their routine of like when they go to the store, we might say, how do they respond if somebody waves to them, or, you know, how do they, you know, what do they observe when they are at the store? Some kids are more focused on like the items versus the people. Or a big one is like if they go to the park. Of course, sometimes we get, well, we don't go to the park when there's other people, probably a lot less of that now. But like if you're at the park and other kids show up, how do they respond? You know, do they observe? Do they run away? Do they seem to notice? You know, so I usually ask like, how do they respond, or what's their level of interest in other kids? And then maybe like if they're out and a kiddo comes up to them to talk to them, what would they do? Those are some of mine.
Those are some really good ones. Do you guys ever ask about like eye contact with this? Like, do they look at you when they're requesting something? Do you guys ever ask about that?
I personally try to avoid questions about eye contact.
Okay.
I think
Why
it's
is
a
that?
very gray area personally. And listening to adults with autism has like really opened my understanding of eye contact, and like either A, not forcing it, or B, it doesn't mean what we think it means. So just because they're not making eye contact, does that really mean that they're not paying attention? Does that really mean that they don't want to connect? So I don't know. I think I showed a little extra anger emotion there. So Miss Skip.
You're all good. It's all good.
But
This
I
is a
do
good
try to
place.
avoid the eye contact question and use it in a different way. So like maybe interest or notice or respond or look. Do they look to you if you call their name? Like instead of saying eye contact, I might say, do they look in the direction? I don't know. What do you guys do?
I just
would
kind of
agree.
observe. Yeah, the evaluation. Are they looking at me when I'm talking to them? Are they looking at mom and dad when they call their name? Just kind of watching how they react.
And using those questions of how do they request for something? I mean, having them kind of explain a little bit more, you know, when they want more of something to eat, how do they ask you for that? Is it, you know, without giving them the answer, you know, how do you know that they want something? How do you know that they want a toy out of reach? What does that look like? And have them kind of explain that a little bit. If I have concerns about eye contact based on what I've observed, I might delve more deeply into that and have them explain that a little bit more.
Yeah. I'm always curious by the ones that kind of just put their hand out when they want something. Like they'll be like this, but their head is turned in the complete opposite direction. I kind of asked, well, again, I think somebody had already mentioned it. They look at you and they're requesting something. So at least, you know, kind of looking at the person when you know that they need, and not necessarily eye contact, but at least looking at the person when you need something. So very good. I always like to hear what other people are doing out there. It's so this is as good for me as it is for you. I like that part. Okay, so let's see, who do we have here? I'm trying to share this again. I really wish. Do you see my PowerPoint now?
Bubbles.
Bubbles. Oh, okay. You're not seeing that.
Balls, balloons. Big blue.
Okay. You see it now?
There.
There. Okay. All righty. So we will move on to learning the follow-up. So we're listening to the family, they're talking, which is again why when I get back on that video with Robin doing that that RBI that he's doing with that couple, they are talkers. So that interview is lasting 2 hours, and that it wouldn't be something that I would expect most families to be able to sit down to either have the time for that or you know, to not be distracted in 2 hours with a little one, because typically we don't do those you know, outside of the home, or again, if you're doing it with the evaluation, the child's always there. So that would be kind of really long. But making sure you're doing the follow-up questions where you feel like you need more detailed information, which I know you guys are probably doing, like, well, explain that to me, or give me more information about that, or what does that look like for you? So, and then always ask what everyone else is doing. I think that's a big part of this RBI that gets lost in doing a routines-based interview for that family assessment piece, is asking about the family, asking about what everyone else is doing. And again, making sure that you're asking how satisfied they are with that routine on a scale of 1 to 5, because that is going to kind of propel you into a conversation about what do you want to happen next, or what do you want to do to make that better, kind of a thing. It just really gives them it gives you an insight into how the family is feeling about that time of day. Like I said, there's been a few times I've been surprised by the family's number that they've given me when I thought it sounded like everything was going, or it sounds like everything's going really bad, and they give it a 5. That's always interesting to me too. And then, as you heard Robin in that last video, when he was finished with the morning, his next question is always what happens next. He doesn't guess at what happens next. He always says what happens next. Not necessarily, so then you go out the door, or then you go to daycare, or then you lay down, or it's, either what happens next or what happens after wake up time. Kind of a thing is a really good prompt to give them to answer that. Again, like, the family has to answer these questions. You can't just, so there's that safer combo that kind of will align with the RBI, and it kind of gives you all the different routines and some questions to ask with each routine. But the problem with that is that sometimes people are like, okay, so what happens with diapering? All right. And then tell me what happens at nap time. Do they lay down? Okay. And then, oh, how do they like baths? And I've been just as guilty at that too, especially if something is, I just need to know about bath time. But if you're doing an RBI and you're wanting to know what's going on with the family and what the routines are, you need to ask what happens next. So then we have the time, worry, and change questions. So after that whole discussion of each routine and giving it a number and moving forward, he asks these 3 questions. And when I went through the Institute, it was just the time and worry question. And I wasn't always comfortable in asking these questions. I'm probably better at it now because I've been back out there working with families again. But before, I was a little bit hesitant to ask these. But after the discussion of routine, he'll just ask, first of all, do you have enough time for yourself? And this is really only if you haven't covered this particular concept before of the family feeling overwhelmed. I feel like all I ever do is take care of kids, or, I work and I come home and I take care of the kids, and you can kind of sense, or even come right out and ask, do you have enough time for yourself? So of course, he has a little script that he suggests. So thank you for letting us get to know what a typical day is like for you and your family. It sounds like you are pretty busy around here. I'm curious if you feel that you have enough time for yourself, or yourself with another person, which means like, with their spouse or partner or whatever. So he feels like that's a really important question, because again, that kind of really is directed towards self-care. And if the family, if the parents aren't getting some time to recharge, that sometimes that kind of leads into just some other issues that may happen at home. His second question is, when you lie awake at night, what do you worry about? And if you could change anything about your life, what would it be? So these questions are really intended for you to gain insight into the family's like hopes, dreams, worries, stressors. He really wants you to ask these questions exactly how they're written out there. I did send the protocol to you all, so you should have that, and those are on the protocol also. So let's see, yeah, so he has updated his protocol, but yeah, those are on there too. So the protocol is just really nice, just to kind of keep you on the flow of an RBI if you're really determined to do it with fidelity. So yeah, and it's at the end of the interview. It's like all the way at the end. So he does those worry change questions. So how comfortable are you guys asking those kind of questions with the families that you work with? Jordan is saying no.
Hi, this is Jessie. I was just thinking, like, these are the hardest ones for me because I feel like they're very personal, and I've done it with some families, and then I start getting information from, the mom that they're on medication for depression and they have anxiety, and they go, and I mean, it's great information, but then I don't want them to feel like I'm expecting them to give all this personal information. I don't know. It's really hard. That is really hard for me. So I would like some help in me feeling more comfortable asking those questions. And then how do I respond then to the parent when they give you very personal information that, isn't, they worry about something that's not related to the child, then what do I do with that?
Mhm. Mhm. Yes. So that was exactly how I felt. That was like, honestly, in a nutshell, kind of like, oh, what do I do with this? And how do I go about this? And so, over the years I've had, and actually it was somebody there, the last RBI that I did, at your, at Johnson County Infant Toddler. And she was really good about what she did with the information, but she was also a social worker, and I can't remember who it was. I had the sign-in sheet, but I can't remember who it was. And she was really, really good about asking that information and then knowing what to do with that information.
Probably Tracy or Hannah, maybe Tracy.
Maybe Tracy. Yeah, I had my sign-in sheet somewhere, but yeah, she was really good. And she kind of schooled us all when we were there about how to react to those kind of things. And I think that's where this is kind of a good group activity, because we all have our own style of asking about those questions and our own comfortableness of taking in that information. I do feel more comfortable with some families as opposed to other families in asking that. But really the whole idea of that is to see if there's assistance that you can really provide that family, because if they're not taking care of themselves, they're not going to be taking care of that child to their full ability either. So it's really looking at the parent and the family structure. And that was really what she had talked about too, was like, if the parent is, kind of walking this tightrope of just trying to survive, she's not able to give, or he's not able to give everything that he needs to do for this child who now has a disability or delay. So helping them through some of those things, providing resources if they're depressed and they're not seeking any kind of help for that, any kind of counseling, referring them to the community counseling center that you might have in your area, having some of those resources available to families. Because again, going back to the fact that if they're, again, the whole, plain adage of, you got to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help somebody else. So if the family is truly struggling, they're really not going to be able to provide that intervention that we're trying to teach them for their child. And so that really is the whole concept behind that. So like I said, I'm way more, the worried question is harder for me than the what would you change, because some families are like, I would go back to school, or I would do this. And so again, kind of helping them with their hopes and dreams and giving them some value to what it is that they want to do is extremely helpful for the family, because sometimes people don't ask them, what do you want to do? Or what do you want to do differently? Or, this is about you. These questions are specifically about the parent. These are not about the child. And so sometimes when you have a child with a disability, all of the energy goes to the child and the parent is kind of left with, yes, I don't want to be selfish. I don't want to appear, anything like that, but they have their own hopes and dreams also. So that's kind of the concept that I got behind some of those, was really understanding what the family wants for themselves is just as important as what they want for their child. And whether we can do anything about it or not, I don't think they're necessarily looking at us to solve that, but sharing that with you just kind of builds some of that trust that they have, that you do care about them as much as you care about their child. So, and this is about a family process and not just about the child. So that's about the best I can do to explain those questions. I had a provider ask me, so when you ask them about if there's enough time, so they tell me that there's not enough time. What am I supposed to do? Offer to babysit their kid? And I was just like, oh, that's funny. I hadn't even thought about that. But no, if you do an eco map, kind of, looking at maybe some of the resources that they have, or maybe looking at some ways to access daycare 1 time per week, or a mom's day out program, or something like that might be helpful for them if they're not aware of some of those programs. Because like I said, sometimes I think we give parents a lot of credit on knowing what resources are out there when they don't know what resources are out there. How did, nobody's told them about anything. And I look at us who are out there in the field and trying to gather resources, and how hard that is for us to keep track of who's providing what kind of resources in your community, because it changes so much. So I think it's just a matter of just finding some different aspects of helping the adults in the child's life be better for themselves. So that's about the best.
I like that you say that, because I think a lot of times some of us get stuck on like those ending questions are some kind of indicator of like why we're evaluating or what kind of outcomes we're going to come up with. And that's not always necessarily true. And I also think even if a parent misunderstands what we're asking and they give us an answer, then that's what was in their head and we don't need to change it. So like, for example, I'm just looking at an RBI I did the other day. And when I said, when you lie awake at night, what you worry about, and I don't know if I used those exact words, but it was part of that. And mom said that she would like to work on more academic things with him, like numbers and colors, etc. And so we don't want to automatically be like, oh, well, you don't really need to worry about that because he's not even talking yet. Like, okay, great. So maybe that's an indicator that mom feels like she doesn't have enough time to spend with him, or she's really concentrated on older brother and she feels like she's not really doing her mom job, or whatever it is. Obviously that was something she wanted to say, and that doesn't mean we're going to make a goal on like learning numbers and colors. Because then later on, based on the conversation, what are some of the routines or activities we need to address for the outcomes? Mom was like, I want him to be able to request things and not just use hand gestures. But on the RBI, it says end of interview, determine main concern by asking. And so I think we look at that and then we're like, oh, these are the things that are helping me with what the main concern is for the kid. And so I feel like that wording maybe sometimes throws us off.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I feel like I have an idea of like, that's not really helping me make goals. Like we're just doing the RBI, we're getting the information from the parents and we're getting a good picture of what they look like as a family. And then we can give that to the person who's going to start working with them, whether it's us or not.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. So you're talking about like on number 13, are you looking at the protocol? Is that what you're looking at? Like on number 13? Because after the last.
Yeah. Just the routine-based interview, like the blank form that we use for all of them. It says at the end of interview, determine main concern by asking. And then those questions are, when you lie awake at night, what you worry about, if there's anything you'd like to change, what resources have already in place, what would you like to change?
Okay. So that's not the protocol that I gave you.
No, that's the one we've been using, right?
Oh, that's everybody. Okay. Okay.
Right.
And that might be
something old.
Kind of confusing. Because these aren't part of like what your outcomes are going to be. This is really just kind of giving a parent a chance to kind of talk about themselves. Monica, did you want to talk?
My volume was down a little bit. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, you're on mute, Nadine.
Sorry. I was just talking about the blank RBI that we use.
Yeah, so that form was created by us. It is not the form that Robin has. We
right. Okay.
Yeah, we modified it to be available for our staff, and so so that's something that we've made up. It's not Robin's form. It's very similar with some differences.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah. Because these aren't a part. Yeah, those questions are kind of really separate from outcome selection, which does come after that, though. It kind of gives parents just a way to kind of just verbalize what they want for themselves and really just to think about it. Because again, I don't think anybody ever asked them, what would you like to see different? Or, what would you like to see change? If you could go back, what would you change about your life? So I was just going to show you his interview with the family, and when he asked them, like the moment that they sit back and be like, oh, I don't know, I hadn't really thought about that. So, it just does give them a chance to kind of think about who they are. So let's try to do that. So he's doing probably in here.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure we'll
get
to
there
sit down
eventually. I
this,
mean,
but it-
because we need to teach you some manners eventually, and you know, that kind of thing. That's important to me.
Mhm.
So.
Well, it is true that if you want something to happen, if you get into a pattern of doing something one way, it gets hard to change it later on.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's kind of more of the if we are sitting at the table, it's kind of hard to tend to her. But if we come up with a plan to put her in her high chair and then get her up there, and then she'll entertain. We go out to dinner and she does fine when we
Mhm.
all are sitting there.
I think what Jason's trying to say, so long as it's not at Jeopardy time, because.
Well, maybe we can work into sitting at the table but still watching Jeopardy. I mean, then we can slowly get that off and.
You know, basketball game's on, it's gonna take priority.
Yeah, no,
But you know, we have such little time.
One is. which
Have
we
you ever
use.
stopped to think how much knowledge you've gained in
Oh,
16
people talk to
months?
us and like, you sound like
Yeah.
doctors.
Yeah.
It's something
It's
that
a lot
we
of information.
feel like we need to do though,
Mhm.
because there are families that what we understand, there are families that just don't even.
Preparatory work in the way.
Yeah.
It's along the lines of.
She won't let us put it in her mouth.
Yeah.
Similar to the food.
Yeah.
She likes to play with her toothbrush, but not in the way she's supposed to.
Will she put it in her mouth herself? No.
She'll put her fingers in her mouth. Of, you know, guy at your work that's checking in on you every time.
You mean checking on intrusive on the nurses?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I worry that are they gonna be sleeping, and then
Mm-hmm.
that starts a whole new can of worms.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sorry, here it is.
Yeah.
Daddy's here. I'm gonna play with my daddy.
Right. You didn't pretend to be asleep right away?
Yeah, I try and
Yeah,
try a lot of different ways.
Don't give her eye contact.
Yeah.
Maybe she'll go back to sleep.
Is there anything that you think would be nice for her to be able to do at bedtime down the road, 6 months or so, that she's not doing right now?
I think we need to work on her like toothbrushing and you know, getting that kind of preparatory work in the way.
Yeah.
It's along the lines of.
She won't let us put it in her mouth.
Yeah.
Similar to the food.
Yeah.
She likes to play with her toothbrush, but not in the way she's supposed to.
Will she put it in her mouth herself? No.
She'll put her fingers in her mouth. She used to chew on some of her like teething toys, but I don't think she does a whole lot of that anymore.
Yeah. So mostly she acts like she doesn't want things in her mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Toothbrushing, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd like to also see her putting herself down, like not requiring her to be rocked. Some nurses say that she will be awake and then lay down and go to sleep.
Mm.
But then there's other nurses that she's awake because she's so stimulated and she wants to play and she loves that nurse and she wants to, that she
Mhm.
requires them to then rock her to sleep or read her a book or whatever. And it's the same with me. Like I can't just put her in the crib and let her fall asleep because she will wake up, stand up, and like
Okay.
be like, Mom, I want to play, I want to play.
Yeah,
so
she
I
does
have
that
to
for me
rock
too.
her.
So when you're rocking
So-
her, do you rock her until she falls asleep? So then you're just moving the sleeping
Yeah.
body into
Yeah.
her.
Yes,
Okay, I see.
Without her waking
Yeah.
back up.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. Let me just ask you two more questions, and then I'm going to remind you of the main things that
Sure.
you guys said. When you lie awake at night worrying, what do you worry about?
The nurses aren't sleeping. I would like, if we didn't have nurses and we just had a baby sleeping in there, every time I woke up to go to the bathroom, or if I woke up in the middle of the night, I would go in and check on her.
Mhm.
And I hesitate to do that because I just don't want to be that intrusive, you know, guy at your work that's checking in on you every time.
You mean checking on intrusive on the nurses?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I worry that, oh, are they going to be sleeping? And then
Mm-hmm.
that starts a whole new can of worms.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't usually have a problem sleeping, so.
But do you have a problem worrying?
Here and there, sometimes.
So what is
it's
your
more
biggest?
internal.
Yeah, of course, worrying usually is. So
Yeah,
what is your worrying?
It's probably just, I don't know, that she's getting better.
Oh, okay.
I don't want anything to happen where she's set back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's come so far, so,
Mhm.
you know, and, you know, if she's having a bad day, if she's, like yesterday, she threw up 4 times, which is
Mhm.
very abnormal. And it's just like, that's what I worry about. Is there something the matter? Is she like,
So something like that.
like
so-
medically
Yeah.
wrong?
Yeah.
Like if you hear her suction machine turned on, I worry that she's vomiting. They're not just trying to suck it out.
Yeah,
her
is she getting the
secretions.
proper care that she needs? I think
Yeah.
it would be something I worry about a lot too. Is she getting care? If he's on watching her, then I don't have a problem. No worry at all.
Yeah.
But, you know,
But with the
it's-
nurses, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, is she getting the proper care? Are they attentive enough to her?
If I were to go back to work and Sarah's at work as well, is the nurse just gonna set her in a snuggle puppy and leave her there and talk on the phone the whole time, or is she actually gonna allow her to do what she's supposed to be doing, playtime, learning to crawl and walk and that sort of thing?
Yeah.
So that's our biggest worry with the nurses at this point.
If there's anything you could change in your lives, what would it be?
I had $1 million.
Yeah.
I wish we could get the nurses we want in here. That's my biggest pet peeve. I get pushback from the company saying, well, if we take this nurse's one day away, I'm afraid she's going to be asked to take it off the case. I'm like, well, then we'll get better nurses in here. I want people that I feel comfortable that if something were to happen, they're intelligent enough, have the proper problem solving skills to be able to do that. Not yell down, Miss Sarah, her trach came out. I'm like, you're the nurse, you should be able to put the trach back in. Not have me sprint upstairs and undo it and put it back in.
I just would like to be free of the medical life with time.
Yeah.
That's my, long-term desire.
Just raise a kid without worrying about the.
And I know that in a normal, lifestyle, there's going to be a whole nother set of worries. I think we're pretty laid back as far as okay, so she got dirty, who cares? It's all about perspective, really, and it's, but that would be nice to just be rid of the medical necessity.
Yeah. Okay, let me go over what you guys have been talking about. These stars here.
Okay, so that's him asking those questions with somebody who is very, in tune with what's happening with them. Not all families are that in tune, and clearly they have a problem with the nursing care that their child is getting. Any questions about how he did that? And he really didn't dwell on it, and he doesn't usually do that, dwell on it at all either. He's really asking them so that it almost like it comes to top of mind for them. So, any questions or comments about that? Okay, so following that worry, that time worry change questions, and you're kind of getting, kind of focused on the parent, he then switches back to the outcome selection. So what he's going to do, he's going to recap the whole interview, which his recap on this one, it's only supposed to take 5 minutes to recap. His recap on this is much longer. So we're not going to watch the whole recap, but from that recap, he goes into outcome selection. So we're going to talk about that. And then, and this is where he truly looks to the family to say, you pick out what you want to work on. Here's what you've told me. We spent this 2 hours together. We've talked about all of this stuff. What do you want to work on? So here's, and he'll go through and he'll say, you kind of mentioned here that this, you might be able to improve this here. I'm not sure that that's what you want to work on. And he takes out an empty sheet of paper to write down everything that they say. So, and he doesn't look at his notes. He doesn't give him his notes yet either. He just says, okay, so what do you want to work on? Because he feels like those are the ones that are going to rise to the top. Those are the ones, those are going to be top of mind. Those are going to be the ones that truly are the family is invested in wanting to know more about. So, so we will talk about that. And he really insists on the parent choosing all of their outcomes. So, and this family will. And, and he's just listing all of those outcomes. He's not putting them in priority order either. So just because they said it first doesn't necessarily mean that that'll be the first one on their priority list, because after he makes his list of, okay, what do we want to work on? Then he hands them the list again and says, okay, so put those, what do you want to work on first? If you could only work on one thing, and that's usually his phrase, if you could only work on one thing, and even though that's not true, what would it be? And that's usually how he puts them in order. So he has them list all the outcomes, and then he has them prioritize the outcomes. And again, it's really good for families to sit down and think about what is it that you want for your child. You know, you're not just coming in and, you know, fixing anything. You're really, again, this really kind of shows that partnership that you have with families and how much they should be and need to be invested in this early intervention program that they're doing. So, so I'm going to show you then, kind of like, I'm not going to go through the whole recap because like I said, it's too long, but I'll start it and then I'll move it through. Where's my little play button?
Your main concerns for her that you said were feeding, speech, and the trach out eventually. At waking up time, things are going great, but it was the first time we were talking about, so this is where I heard about her vomiting and that you want that to decrease. Ripping, Alyssa sometimes pulling out her tubes, is that right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, she'll grab her NG tube, pull it out.
Yeah. She's making kissing sounds, but that's about it for now, for some obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So you've been working on signing or pointing, and you said you'd like to see her doing those. For you guys to learn more signs so that you can have exploring signing, communication board with the iPad, and as well as diaper change. Oh, diaper. Oh, it was part of this on this outing also that you'd like to see her pointing or calling mom and dad, just the communication stuff again. Okay, diaper change is fine. Dinner preparation and dinner, everything's going pretty much the way you want it, except that Sarah wants dinner at the dinner table.
Maybe we can do it every once in a while.
It says here with candles and wine. Just in case you kind of missed the point there.
Yeah.
Sarah wants to continue. She's had, you have been conscious about making time for yourself and continuing to do that. That's good. At bedtime, getting the toothbrush into Alyssa's mouth at some point. And then Alyssa's going to sleep without being rocked, without needing to be rocked. And trying to get some kind of control over the quality of nursing. Yeah. Okay, did I summarize kind of the main concerns there?
Yeah.
Okay, so here is a blank piece of paper now, and this is where I'm going to write down what you actually want to be on the list of goals for Alyssa and yourselves. And don't worry about the order, let's sort the order out.
Okay.
So I just reminded you of the stuff that you mentioned, just to help you think about what might go on this list.
So, goals, any goals?
Yes, for yourselves, for Alyssa.
Okay.
What you want to have happen in 6 months.
Oh, in 6 months?
Yes.
Walking?
Okay.
No oxygen during the day.
No O2 during day. Okay.
Meaningful communication. I don't really care how. Somehow.
Okay, let me go back to the walking for a second. I just realized I'm going to lose track here. At what times of the day would it be helpful for her to be able to walk?
I think during
Playtime.
During our outings would be fun.
Yeah.
Because we go on walks a lot.
Okay, so that's just a quick little thing that says, and he'll tell you, he's like, I don't always do an RBI perfect every time. Nobody does. You can't collect all of the information, but he will stop, because when you're asking for them to name some outcomes, you're always supposed to put it in the context of a routine. Like, so when do you want them walking? So that they're not just coming, okay, so now we got through all of that and I want them to walk and I want them to talk and I want them to use the potty. So you're really kind of going back and saying, okay, so when would you want them to do that? So they're all in the context of routine. So which obviously he initially forgot, and he's going to go back and ask about the other one too. But I think it's interesting just to watch him do some of these, and, you know, you get caught up in the conversation and you forget things like everybody. So, and so does he. So.
So
We have a
going
cute
along,
little
go to the park.
wagon that we pull it around.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then you said meaningful communication, and so you don't care whether it's sign,
Yeah.
pointing on a board or
Yeah.
what it is, but,
Yeah.
okay.
Just so she can express what she's interested in, or
Single words probably in 6 months still, right?
Yeah, I
Because
think
she's
so.
going to be 20 months old.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And what times of the day would that be especially
Playtime.
helpful?
anytime.
It is
Yeah,
anytime because it's
anytime, yeah.
communication, but think of the times of the day
And
where
that
it'd
we
be most
interact.
meaningful.
It's probably in the evening when we're having family time.
Okay, evening, family time. Okay,
Really help the nurses too, but at this point it's more like when we're all together.
okay.
It'd be nice if we didn't have as many doctor's appointments in 6 months. It is slowing down, so it might be a realistic goal.
Doctor's appointments, okay?
No more vomiting.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the theme.
Yeah. Down.
Maybe so with the getting downstairs sooner and having sit down meals, like those types of things, I think it's just adding more structure to our day, which I know it sounds awful, doesn't
Yeah, it
it?
does.
Because we just have to
Then
go
why
with
do
the
you want
flow.
it?
We
Yeah,
just,
right?
yeah, we just have to go with the flow. That's kind of just our style of just like Alyssa kind of has to tell us what she wants to do
Mhm.
as far as like if she's vomiting a lot, then we're gonna keep her upstairs, you know, or
Mm-hmm.
if we try to stick to a schedule, which we've learned from being new parents, is if we try to stick to a schedule, it's not going to happen. Our 4:30 departure on Sunday.
Board of oxygen, moving beyond the living room. Okay.
At this point, he's handed them his notes.
Get to the point where she can do the swallow
Yeah,
study.
feeding. We don't have that as
Okay.
a goal. We want
So
her
what-
I just wanted to see her improve. I know that's like a very general term.
Yeah, so
but
if she
I
improves,
just want her
she
to
will be doing
improve,
what? That she's not doing now?
Taking more by mouth.
Oh, you meant feeding by mouth, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Taking some amount of food,
Yeah.
to be determined,
Yeah.
food by mouth. Yeah?
Yeah, that's
Okay. And that's at meals. Yeah. Okay. Tube out. Maybe the nurses about protecting the trach. What about you going to the gym?
Sure.
Sarah?
Don't hold me to it though.
Do you want to make it, see, because over here,
It's just like
where is it?
taking time for myself.
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah, I think that's the general goal. And whether that be getting a pedicure or going to the gym,
Okay.
you know.
If you were getting some time for yourself once a week, would that seem like it was about right? Is that
Yeah.
too much, too little?
Yeah, it depends what we're doing. Because it's like I don't feel like I need that if we're
No.
doing.
Which is a plus.
Yeah. Are you any good at it?
I think I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah.
I could show you some pictures later.
Yeah. Have you got a website yet?
That's all. This is very new that we're gonna start this. So yeah, I got my IT specialist here that can help me with it. I could do some of
Yeah.
it too if I learned it, but
Okay, so here we have this list. Ready? Walking. Alyssa's walking. No oxygen during the day. Meaningful communication. Fewer doctor's appointments. No vomiting. Organize the days. Nurses. Focusing. Taking food by mouth. Sarah, time for herself. And Jason, develop woodworking business. Okay, if this isn't true, but if we could only do one of these, what would it be?
vomiting, inflammation.
Yep.
Vomiting thing, okay. Well, let's keep going though. What's the second most important one?
Taking food.
Yeah.
Taking food. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Communicating.
Yep. Communicating.
Between the nurses and the oxygen.
Probably your business.
Sure.
She's being nice to you.
No, because he was silent, waiting for me to just say it, because he knew.
Okay then.
Right?
Sure. Sarah could be nice. Right
Okay.
behind me.
That's
And which is
fine.
next?
Thank you.
Sarah.
Mine.
Sarah.
And then, yes.
You can actually just cross that one off.
No. Okay, that, from what, two things that conclusions I came to listening to this. One is, Alyssa is really lucky she's living in the house that she's living in. That is really clear. And the other is that this list looks like, considering the things that you guys talked about, you know, that she's doing, she needs to do, and that you guys want to do as a family, this would be a great list for starting to work on that. Nice job.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so that's the end of it. So that's how he does it. That was 2 hours with that family. So again, that is just his RBI to Fidelity. That is probably not real in practice for any early intervention program that uses the RBI. So and although if you talk to him, at least in my most recent conversations with him, he doesn't like that it's been kind of a modified RBI, but I think in reality, there's no way to do that with families and still meet your 45-day timeline and get everything else in that you need to do in the first 45 days. So, but he does an excellent job, obviously, of connecting with families, because he really does connect with families. He really does use a lot of humor. He uses, he's very comfortable. He makes them feel very comfortable in sharing with him. Very non-judgmental to a certain extent, and truly allows them to make a list of what they're doing. And sometimes it surprises them. And, there was a provider who had responded to that and said, well, Robin, sometimes when I ask them what they want to work on, they just look at me like deer in the headlights. So I kind of already know, so I'll just start putting that down. And he got very upset. He was just like, no, that is exactly what you don't do. They're going to look at you with, deer in the headlight kind of a look, because nobody's really asked them that before. Give them a minute, let them choose. That makes these outcomes theirs. It doesn't make it yours, it makes it theirs. It doesn't make it your plan for their child, it makes it their plan for their child. So he just finds it really, really important that if nothing else, at the end, you let them choose the outcomes and you make them prioritize them. So are there any questions about that? Any concerns, any challenges that you feel like that might bring on in doing that?
I feel like I just keep talking. Sorry. Perfect. I think sometimes some of that conversation happens during the RBI, during our evaluation, and then some of the conversation happens when we're actually developing the outcomes at the IFSP. So just having that good balance of like how deep to go into it during the RBI, during the eval.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that, because you guys do the kind of the first half of the RBI and the evaluation together, and then come back out and do an IFSP outcome selection, those kind of things. So I can definitely see where, that outcome selection, like some of that gets carried over into a second visit, which again, for time reasons, you almost have to do that, because you couldn't do nearly even half of all of this in, and an evaluation and all of that in one visit. But so again, I like the RBI. I like the concept of the RBI. I again find it to be challenging in some ways, in the fact that, again, when he's doing an RBI, he is, making an appointment. It's just the family. He's sitting in front of potentially an audience or just the family there, and he's not in their home typically. He's, outside, and you don't have all of those distractions. Because I don't know about you guys, I've been in some evaluations where I'm like, I get out of there and I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, that was a lot going on in that house. There was people talking everywhere, like I said, phones ringing, dogs barking, people knocking on the door. Mom's trying to tend to, 2 or 3 other kids, and I'm trying to kind of get information from her. So having her sit down with me is not always, just having her sit down with me is not easy, much less, kind of going through some of these like engaging her in a conversation about what her biggest concerns are. So, so I don't know if you guys have families like that or if that happens to you, but those are my most challenging ones. Is like, I can work with the quiet ones. My most challenging ones are the families that have so much going on.
I was just going to say, I think that's a really ideal situation he presents, but not one that we see very often.
Exactly. And I try to, give that caveat when I show that, is that, yes, this is how it would be if you're Robin McWilliam and, you're sitting, you make appointments and people watch you do an RBI. That would be ideal. Exactly. But in reality, again, we do the best we can in relating with families and connecting and making sure that that we're reaching them. So everybody's got their little animals with them. My doggy's sleeping right at my feet, but so do you guys have any questions about the RBI? I do have so a lot of his information comes from, where did my books go? Okay, there. Routines-based early intervention. You have this one, don't you, Monica? Yeah.
Yes.
I have that one. And then I also have working with families of young children with special needs. This one's pretty good too, but I'm sure there's a lot more new information out there too, because early intervention has really been getting a lot of attention over the last several years. Hopefully kind of getting more funding, just kind of seeing how COVID has affected families. I don't know if you guys are seeing more and more families that have children who are like a little bit socially behind, along with communication, even some motor, where they've spent a lot of time at home, a lack of seeing other people, a lack of, that kind of thing. Daycares seem to have had a lot of turnover, so kids don't have a lot of consistent childcare in some of the childcare situations that I've been into. And so I see a lot of kids that are just dysregulated with a lot of anxiety, just not sure what's happening. Their world is not predictable at this point, and so they're just kind of uncomfortable. Are you guys seeing a lot of that? Yeah.
Michelle, did you see, I sent out an article recently too. There was from DEC, I think, that talked about that they're doing some studies now on looking at that trauma that the parent's mom is experiencing during pregnancy is changing the physiological development of the child's brain. And so they're thinking that the trauma might be, the mom's trauma during pregnancy may be impacting the child's development more than the mask wearing or, some of those other kinds of concrete changes, which I thought was super interesting. I'll send that article to you if you haven't had a chance to read it.
Do.
Yeah, you'll like it with all that.
I was going to say, I find all of that stuff. I love to do all the research, like, oh, give me that to read.
yeah, I'll send it your way. But yeah, we're seeing more and more and more. In fact, I think last year we had, 1,700 referrals, and normally we have 1,500. So, and like you said, the delays in multiple areas for the same child are unfortunately becoming a very kind of standard at this point in time.
Yeah. Yeah, because even when I provide services in daycare, I see so many other kids that I feel like could also be in early intervention that are not. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's just so, it's hard because you have a lot of teachers in there too that are just not equipped to really care for a lot of kids with these delays. And so you have a whole classroom full of 2-year-olds that really aren't talking a whole lot. And and it's just, it's almost what their norm is. It's a little bit scary for me, but we'll get there. So yeah, so if you guys don't have any questions, I am here if you need anything. I think you all have my email now. Just let me know. Monica, do you need anything else?
I don't think so. I did, just to let you guys know, I did send Michelle a little email, and we'll come up with the CEU certificate and get that to you guys for hours. And then some of you, Honor, Jesse, are going to be on PSP cohort later, when we were actually ironically talking about IFSP outcomes and services. So, you know, again, great, I think, lead into that little kind of meeting and topic of conversation today anyway. So, and then the other group you did this fall, like Luke and Taylor, Lisa Berry, Caitlin, when we had you come and do the RBI for them this fall. So yeah, it's definitely a work in progress, and I think a great reminder. And some of the veteran staff are on because their mentors or their students are on. So again, that way, if they go to their mentor with a question, the mentor knows what you just said. So, you know, it's a little check and balance.
Very good. Very good. I love the way that you guys do so much of your training. I also don't see a lot of that over in Missouri. I've really been bashing Missouri today, but yeah, you guys do a lot of that professional development. And I think even just having your providers come together and just brainstorm and talk about some of those things and reflect on kind of what it's like out there right now is extremely helpful, extremely helpful. So, but you guys are a great bunch. So I appreciate all of the participation I had today.
Well, thank you, Michelle. Whenever you want a full-time job, you come over here.
I will do that. I'll head on over to Kansas.
Come back to Kansas.
All right. Well, you guys take care. Stay safe, stay warm.
Thank you, Michelle.
Bye-bye.